is Custis, and I'm going to be talking to you today about Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth's actual name was Isabella Baumfree. She was born in 1797 in upper state New York to her father, who was a slave from Ghana, and to her mother, who was a slave from Guinea. In New York, the typical language at the time was Dutch, and so Sojourner grew up speaking Dutch. Around 1815, Sojourner Truth fell in love with a man named Robert from a neighboring farm. They had a daughter, and then they also had a son and 2 more daughters. Sojourner was very anti-slavery, and she did not want to accept her current state. So in late 1826, she escaped slavery in New York and escaped to freedom with her daughter, Sophia. Her other daughter and her son unfortunately stayed behind. Later, Truth learned that her son, Peter, who was only 5 years old, had been illegally sold in Alabama. So she took the issue to court, and she actually won. After Truth's successful rescue of her son, Peter, from slavery in Alabama, the boy stayed with his mother until 1839. At that time, Peter took a job on a whaling ship called the Zone of Nantucket. Truth received letters from her son, but the ship never returned in 1842, and Peter was never heard from again. So, Sojourner Truth escaped slavery, but she lived to see one of her sons sold into slavery among her other children, and one of her sons she never saw again. On June 1st, 1843, Isabella Baumfree officially did change her name to Sojourner Truth because she devoted her life to Christianity and the abolition or the ending of slavery. In 1844, she joined the Northampton Association of Education and Industry in Northampton, Massachusetts. Founded by abolitionists, or those against slavery, the organization supported a broad reform agenda, including women's rights and pacifism. So Sojourner Truth not only fought against slavery, she also fought for women's rights. Sojourner Truth became famous because she started speaking at national women's rights conferences about ending slavery and about women's rights. She began touring with other anti-slavery activists such as George Thompson and started speaking to large crowds on the subjects of slavery and human rights. She was one of several escaped slaves, along with Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, to become famous abolitionist leaders. One of her famous speeches happened in Ohio at a women's rights convention in Akron. I wanted to read part of this speech to you. The title of the speech is called Ain't I a Woman? So keep in mind that not only is she fighting for the ending of slavery, she's also fighting for women's rights. That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches, and to have the best place everywhere. But nobody ever helps me into carriages, or over mud puddles, or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I could have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most of them sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Sojourner Truth continued to be an activist for anti-slavery and for women's rights most of her life. She ended up living in Battle Creek, Michigan, where she continued to advocate for human rights by speaking out against the death penalty in Michigan. She died in her home in Battle Creek, Michigan on November 26, 1883, and she was buried alongside her family at Battle Creek's Oak Cemetery. Truth is remembered as one of the foremost leaders of the abolitionist movement and the early advocate of women's rights. Although she began her career as an abolitionist, the reforms that she helped to lead sponsored more broad and varied rights for women and for those in prison. Abolition was one of the few causes that Truth was able to see realized, as well as women's rights. But as we all know, the story that we have ended slavery, we have gained more women's rights, and so her passion and her dedication for justice and for equality were amazing, especially during the time that she lived. And so she's an inspiration to me, And I hope that she's an inspiration to everyone who is facing a challenge or a struggle. And I think that she can really help show that no matter what, if you speak your truth and you speak your mind, that you can do anything and accomplish anything you want.